We're joined today on It's Art, Let's Talk About It with Bill Kalwick, our good friend. Bill, thank you for coming on the show and welcome to the podcast. One of the things that we talk about all the time with artists when I say, hey, let's do a podcast together, is people say, like you did coming in the room, do we have talking points? And yet art is something we talk about on a daily basis.
Right.
Every time we're together, we talk about art. It flows naturally. And yet people seem to sit down with the headset on. And our good friend Edith Baskey is my reference point for that, because last interview we did, bless her heart, she'll talk art all day long. I put a headset on her, she looked like a deer in headlights. It was just, come on, Edith. 45 minutes later, we had talked about art for 45 minutes, and it was just fun. She said, oh, that wasn't too bad. So we'll try not to make this too bad. That's just a little red light, make sure that it doesn't go off. But we're glad to have you on the podcast. And
Thank you.
So it's art. Let's talk about it. The first question I generally ask every artist is,
Okay.
because it's one of those that I think every listener wants to know, especially if they're interested in Bill Kalwick, is how'd you get your start? Were you one of those Jack Sorensen kind of guys who was drawing on mama's walls when he was 3 years old? Or did this come late in life, like it did to Steve Talley, right? And Scott Christensen was 27 before he picked up his first brush. And yet everybody winds up kind of in a different place. And you're one of those really well-known artists in the world. But how did you get your start? I mean,
I just always drew and painted.
And my guess is because of your dad.
Right. My dad was a painter.
You were kind of in an artist world, right?
Oh, yeah. He encouraged me. And if I had questions, I could ask him. So he was great.
So those who don't know, William Kalwick Sr., and let's talk about him for a second real quick.
Sure.
He was a NAWA, National Academy of Western Art.
Yeah,
artist.
He was just his last year of life, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He died young. But yeah, he lived up in Prescott, Arizona, had a studio there in downtown Prescott.
Okay.
And painted there in his old studio. And it was just a really cool place.
But he was an illustrator.
Back in the day, he was an illustrator, for the U.S. government. I think the Army.
And you guys were living in New Jersey?
So at the time, we were living in New Jersey. And so after high school, I went to the Art Students League in New York. That's where my dad had gone.
Okay.
And I enjoyed that. That was great being in New York and got to meet some great artists and stuff.
So that was your formal training, was the art student?
And then, that was a lot of fun.
This would have been in the 1980s?
Yeah, early 80s. Early 80s. And then I said, I'm just not getting everything I want. And my dad had studied with Lajos Markos back in the late 50s, early 60s.
Okay.
And he made a phone call and said, my son, he just wants to be an artist. Can you take a student? And I don't take students. I don't have time for that. But he ended up taking me as a student. And ended up in Houston.
What does that involve, being someone's student?
I guess it varies.
It's kind of an apprenticeship.
In an apprenticeship, he took me under his wing. I went down there, and it was supposed to be just for a few months. And it was neat coming to Houston. I mean, my family's been in and out of Houston for the last 100 years. Okay. So we do have some relationship with Houston. It was neat going there. And it was a 3-month kind of a trial deal. And I went home for Christmas, and I thought it was done. And he called me back and he said, why don't you come back? And I'm like, okay. So I came back to Houston and ended up studying with him for about 5 years. And learned a lot from him. He was a great teacher and really enjoyed it. Ended up going to Europe with him, studying in Italy. And I don't know.
But I mean, in addition to your dad, who was one of the great artists, and then Lajos Markos, you've studied with some other really top art teachers.
Well, mostly, I had a few at the Art Students League, but mostly they were acquaintances or people that I just got to know, who would maybe critique my paintings or things like that. Not necessarily studying under them, but they were helpful. And artists always need critiques. And recently, Martin Greeley was kind enough to give me a critique on a few of my paintings. And that was really nice of him to take time on that. And so I appreciate that. I'm in Houston. We tend to work alone. So it's nice to have someone that we respect to have a look at our paintings every once in a while, see what we're doing.
Yeah. So you basically came to Houston and stayed.
Basically, yeah. So I've been here for 30 some odd years. 7 years.
And if I recall, a lot of that early work was portraiture. You were doing a lot of portraits of CEOs.
Right. So in Houston, my career kind of went in that direction. Ended up painting a lot of retiring CEOs But I always had my foot in the door of Western art and had an early interest in Native Americans as a child. And that was always in the back of my mind. So Native people always held a deep interest to me. In addition to painting retiring CEOs, I would go down to Mexico and paint there.
Yeah.
And I found that subject matter really interesting and got picked up with Texas Art Gallery. Bill Burford was there for a while until he
That's
passed.
where I first heard about you. Was Bill Burford's
right.
shop
So I was
in
there,
Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. So I was there till he passed away. And yeah.
Bill was the one that said to me, watch this guy, because he had a lot of artists and he had a critical eye.
Mm-hmm.
But it was one of these watch this guy kind of thing. He'd sell a lot of art. I'll never forget. He'd be at an auction. He'd tell a big long story about the painting. And finally, he said, it's just, and he was just such a showman and such a great guy with that. But the works that I first saw were Guatemala.
So
how'd you get from Houston, Texas painting CEOs to Guatemala?
Like I said, I'd go down to Mexico and paint there. And there were so many great Western artists. I think, a little intimidated by them.
Yeah.
And I said, I need to maybe find something a little different to paint and stay within that thought of Native Americans, which I enjoyed so much. And someone invited me there. They came to a show I had and they said, you know what? You need to just go down there for a few weeks and paint. You'll love it. And I remember going down there, and this was in the 80s when there was still Civil War going on, and go out there into the countryside. And it was like looking at old black and white photos from the Native Americans. I'm like, wow, where am I?
Yeah.
And just started painting that subject matter, a real colorful subject matter, and got to know the culture and spent my time in the highlands of Guatemala for quite some time. And back then, like I said, there was a civil war going on. Nobody was there. No foreigners were around. There was just a lot of army.
And it's not like you stand out in the crowd.
No, I stand out in the crowd.
I mean, for those of you who don't know Bill personally, I mean, over 6 feet. You're a tall, skinny guy. Guatemala's not known for its tall, skinny people.
No, when I came to town, everyone knew about it.
They knew about the gringo that was coming.
The gringo with the paint box and trying to get people to pose for him. It was a really neat experience. Learned a lot.
But for years, that's what you painted. That's what you.
You know what happened? I came back after that first trip with some paintings under my arm, and I showed them to Bill Burford, and he's, we can't sell that. I'm like, just give it a try. Anyway, he sold them. Sold all of them.
Yeah, no,
he sold everything. Yeah, he sold them all. And he's like, do you have any more of those?
Yeah.
kind of thing. I said, yeah, I have some more. That's kind of what started it. And then started working with a few other galleries. I was at Wade Gallery in Santa Fe for 25 years. Really? And he sold everything I gave him. And he just loved the subject. He thought it was real unique. And so I spent quite a lot of time painting that subject matter. And I was fortunate because I knew that the culture was disappearing. The roads were being built when things were changing really rapidly. So I caught the end of what I thought was a more, hidden culture or hidden world.
Simpler world. Yeah.
Yeah, separate world.
Less electronic world at that point.
Yeah.
When we were visiting there, that kind of thing. Were you married by this time?
No, not in the beginning.
Okay.
No, I wasn't married. And then I didn't get married till I was like 30.
Okay.
And I still kept going down there and painting and doing some workshops here and there.
So a single guy hitting the Guatemalan highlands and selling paintings in Dallas, Texas, and living the life. The reason I ask, and we give every artist a chance to talk about this, is that, and we talked about it the other night in our lecture, is that you've got an art wife, right? You've got somebody who helps you.
Sure.
And we'd hate to not give her a shout out.
No, I'd be lost without Claudia.
I jokingly say to people, if I want to talk art and have fun with my friend Bill, that's one thing. But if I want to do the business side of Bill Kalwick in the museum, I call Claudia.
That's a smart move.
And I do the same thing with lots of the artists in my life. That's not unusual. But you and Claudia have been together for a number of years now.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's been a full life there in Houston, Texas.
Four kids.
Talk about your day. Are you one of those guys that paints on a very regular schedule, 9 to 5, or you paint when the inspiration hits you?
No, every day, just about. I work best, I think, in the morning.
Yeah.
So I get up, have a cup of coffee, and usually get in the studio and start working.
Studio there at home?
Yeah, right now I have a studio in my house, and it's been real convenient. But I wake up with ideas and I want to resolve them on canvas. And I guess you could say the juices are flowing in the morning, and I just keep on going all day until I feel like I've gotten to a certain
And people
point.
find that it's a fascinating, different world. Every artist approaches it a little different. I've got artist friends who work from 6 in the morning till noon. That's it. And I got friends who work from 7 o'clock at night until 3 in the morning, or whenever they just can't hang on to the paintbrush anymore. You do mostly mornings.
Yeah, all
I
day.
mean, all day.
All day. But it depends on I like to have a lot of time because I don't know how long it's going to take me to accomplish what I accomplished. So I don't schedule anything during the day. And if I do have some errands or appointments, I'll try to put everything in one day because when I get in the studio, I don't want to be bothered with anything. I turn off my phone. I don't want to deal with anything else. Just focus on painting.
Always oil?
Yes.
Has it always been oil?
No, I used to do some watercolor. I studied some sculpture with Bruno Lucchesi, a New York Italian painter or sculptor.
Yeah.
And but no, I just always loved oil painting.
And you paint now exclusively at oil?
Oh yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah.
And I've seen a variety of sizes, but do you have a favorite size?
I don't know if I have a favorite size. It depends on the subject matter. And there's certain sizes that I just seem to sell more than others.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell. It depends on my ideas, what I want to paint, and what compositions I come up with, and then I decide on the size. So I don't have any sizes that I go
Are
by.
you a prolific painter?
That's a interesting question.
Kind of a relative term. But I mean, do you paint one a day, one a week, one a month?
It depends on the size of the painting. I don't know. I don't keep track of my
Never thought about
hours.
that.
I don't.
Yeah.
People collectors. Well, how long did that take you? I don't know. I paint it until
My
it's
whole
done.
life, yeah.
When it's done,
Yeah.
and some paintings go really quick, and other ones you fight with a little bit, and some you never resolve.
Yeah, I was telling you the other day, I was with Scott Christensen over
Uh-huh.
a couple of weekends ago, getting ready for this show, and he had a big 48 by 72 that he was throwing away because he said he couldn't resolve it.
That happens sometimes.
And it was amazing to me because to me, and I've got a critical eye, I've got a good eye for art. It looked good.
I'm sure it did.
But he just couldn't, in his head, resolve
Uh-huh.
that whole. And I hear that from a lot of artists. I work on it until it's done.
Right.
And our friend Jason Skull works on it until it's done and done and done. But so you just finally hit a point where you say, okay, I think I'm finished.
I hit a point where I guess maybe I'm out of ideas, or I resolved all my ideas, or I like the
Is
result.
the first part of the painting easier or the last part?
I think the first part of painting is easier. It's the details at the end that I'm not too fond of. I don't like details too much. I put enough details in to tell a story and that I need. I've never been, even in the art that I enjoy looking at, I've never enjoyed art with a lot of details. I like to leave something to the viewer's imagination. I don't think you need to spell out everything. And sometimes I like to leave something go into the shadow and not necessarily have everything outlined. And so that's the kind of art I'm drawn to. And that's what I tried to. I guess I've been influenced by a lot of the early 20th century painters like John Singer Sargent and Anders Zorn and those painters. Sorolla, one of my favorite painters. And I think that style that I've loved since a kid sticks with me. Frank Tenney Johnson was one of my early favorite painters. And a lot of CA artists, Melvin Warren, and all of those from that period, from the 70s and 80s that I got to know growing up, have always really influenced my artwork.
We're joined today on It's Art, Let's Talk About It by Bill Kalwick, an oil painter from Houston, Texas, who's in Kerrville this past month, finishing up. You guys have been a part. You, Eric Slocum, Jason Skull, and Sarah Phippen are what we call the 4 teachers for the Western Art Academy. And that's wrapped up today, matter of fact.
Yep.
And I've been bugging you all month about coming doing a podcast before you leave town. So
here I am.
You talk about your Dan's early influences, Lajos' early influence, of course, the Art League. Tell me about students and what they should be doing. We've had that question a lot in the last month about how do I pursue this? And is it go to college? Is it workshops? Is it find somebody like Lajos to work under or work with in an apprenticeship? If somebody's serious about their art and they want to do that, young listener out there, give them that advice. Tell them what they ought to be doing.
Oh, I think they should look into workshops. I've had many people with master degrees in painting in my classes. I don't know if the university is really the right place if you want to be a painter. I recommend an art school. I tell kids, I said, if you're good at anything else, go for that.
Don't be an artist.
Because you have to have a lot of passion. You have to work hard. There's no guarantees. You have to find someone to study with, take some workshops. And one thing, and a student said this to me, they said, artists are just so generous with their time when it comes to young artists. And it's true.
And that's because
because that's what I got when
people were generous with you.
People were generous with me. I studied with Markos for 5 years. He never charged me a penny. He just took me under his wing. I worked in his studio and it was great. And so if I can help any young people, I try to help. And I do that. I either recommend people that they could study with or workshops they can take, or if they need some models, where they can find some models or whatever. And also I recommend to work from life. Too many of these young people, they just copy photographs. And that's not, you can't just copy photographs.
Yeah.
You have to be creative. If you want to use photos, you have to look at it as a starting point. It's a tool when you want to.
Is there a live? I didn't see. I don't think I've ever seen it. Is there a live portion to the Western Art Academy?
No.
They don't do any live work.
We tried to get that in there, but it's just too hard to squeeze that in a short amount of time.
Because you get 2 weeks with kids.
We have 2 weeks for painting, and sculptors, get 2 weeks.
And this group there's 48 kids in that.
Right. 48.
And you've been doing it how long now?
This is what, the fourth year, I think, fifth year.
Fourth or fifth.
Yeah.
I think you started when I was here.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
It was your first year.
Yeah.
With the deal.
It's a great program. The students get so much out of it through the Houston Livestock and Rodeo Show.
So if you're in Houston, encourage the folks at the Houston Livestock Rodeo Show to support this program. Right? It's sponsored by them through Schreiner University.
What's interesting about it is the winners of the auction all come from this program, which is really neat. Almost the top winners in the auction usually have come through the Western Art Academy. They're usually our students.
And yeah, it's good training. We've been calling it, trying to kind of change the tone a little bit. It's not a workshop as much as it is a boot camp. And these kids, bless their hearts, they get to the end of it. I saw them last night, and they're exhausted.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
And they should be.
It's every day from 9 to 6, and then in the evening from 7 to 9. That part's optional. And then Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening. So, it's a lot of work.
So you'd recommend to a young person who's starting out, lots of workshops, lots of
find
one-on-one, working from life.
Yeah, find some artists when they come to Austin or Houston or somewhere in the area and take a workshop and get to know them, and they'll have suggestions. And I tell them to take things from every artist that they like and make it their own.
I think one of the biggest fears I find in students is they don't know how to call somebody or stop by somebody's studio and say, hey, listen, I'd like to visit with you about my art.
Oh, I imagine so. It's intimidating.
And they need to get past that. And workshops would be a good first place to start because you're paying to be there, right?
And you could talk with the artists and meet the artists and ask them questions and take advantage of just getting to know them.
Yeah. We offer our workshops here at the Museum of Western Art. And why haven't you ever taught one here?
I don't know.
We need to fix that.
Yeah,
I think we could do that.
I'll come up.
We've had Jason Scholes taught for us, and then there's been a lot of folks. We just finished Jack Sorensen.
Oh, yeah.
Ron Riddick's been a part of our workshop over the years. The Museum of Western Art has done, hundreds and hundreds of workshops over the years.
Great opportunity. And I know some of our previous students have taken them.
And yeah, absolutely. Like some of the students that were in Western Art Academy have come back.
Right.
A couple of young ladies did last year. And I think that's always fun because we push that a lot, right? So the workshops is an important part of our world. So those of you interested in, if you're interested in taking a Bill Kalwick workshop, let me know. We'll see if there's an interest out there. I think there would be. And we could do a workshop, maybe keep you around a couple extra days.
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe we ought to do it before the Western Art Academy, and that way you're still fresh.
I'm not worn out. That's a good idea.
What has been the biggest surprise in your art world, your art life, your art career?
No, I don't know. That's hard to say. Yeah, it's change, I
Is it the
think. And
changes?
I mean,
How
no,
has your art
you
changed?
remember back then when it was getting transparencies or slides,
Right.
putting together a portfolio and showing them to galleries. And there were a lot of galleries back then, which isn't the case today. There's not as many galleries and there's more artists. And so it's harder to get into a gallery if you're trying to get into a gallery
Right.
because they're just full.
Are you in any galleries right now, or are you doing it pretty much all on your own?
No, I'm at Wilcox Gallery in Jackson.
Okay.
I've been with them for a long time.
Out there on the highway towards the wildlife refuge.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I've known them for a long time. And I'm at Pitzer's Fine Art.
In Wimberley,
And
Texas.
yeah, they do real well. And in Houston at Jack Meyer Gallery.
And for
And
those of you playing along at home, if you're watching on our website or if you're listening to this from our website link, if you look at the bottom now there, we put the links. We'll put the links for all of those galleries so that
Mhm.
people can go see your work. But what's the best way to see your work? Is it
you can look online. I'm on Instagram. I post a lot of my artwork on Instagram. Facebook, I'm on there also, but not as
you
much.
sell a lot of stuff direct?
I do sell some things direct.
And
Yeah.
that's because they see it and people reach out to you individually?
Yeah, people reach out.
So it's not as much.
Usually it's people that own my artwork already.
So your previous clients are,
Yeah.
you have
Mhm.
a relationship with them.
Yeah, I either met them through the museum or someplace
Yeah.
or a gallery or whatever. And like we talked about before, sometimes somebody will come to a museum show and maybe a year later they see something I post and say, "Hey, I'm interested in that." And I'm like, "Talk to Darrell about it."
I can always help you make a deal. We're fun for that.
I already have one of your clients interested in one of my paintings. So
Well, there you go. Talk about shows for a second, museum shows. This is one you do. Are there others?
I've done
You've
almost
done all of them
I've done,
years, I know, but are
yeah.
you currently, this is the only one that you're doing currently?
Let's see, this year, what am I doing? I have a couple shows coming. I mean, I have the Mountain Oyster Club coming up but several gallery shows.
Seem
Yeah.
to be a lot more of those
Yeah.
out there in the world.
Yeah. That's what I'm working on right now.
The other day at lecture we were giving to the students about the business side of it. One of the things that struck me that you said you need a body of work. Talk about that for a second, kids. Especially
Well,
that young listener who's out there listening.
Yeah, they'll show me a painting or two. And of course, I do interviews. I help the Livestock and Rodeo Art Committee do interviews.
Okay.
And so since I'm in Houston, they say, "Could you just come over and help us do some interviews?" And I talk to the kids and they'll show up with two works of art and a sketchbook with 3 drawings in it. And I'm like, "No, that sketchbook needs to be full. You need to fill up that sketchbook."
Okay.
But really a body of work. I talked to someone recently, they want to pursue an art career and they're talented, but they don't have work. They have a couple paintings that they've done over the last few years. I said, "You need to paint. You can't just have 2 or 3 paintings. If you want to approach a gallery, you have to go show them like 5 or 6 paintings.
Right.
You can't show up with 2 paintings. They want to see body work. So you always have to have a few paintings around."
Yeah. And I've mentioned this before in public. I get 200 portfolios a year. And I don't even look at ones that don't have at least 10 paintings in it because I want to see a variety and a depth and a consistency throughout paintings. I think it'd be easier to say, okay, well, here's 2 paintings and they're pretty consistent, but can you do that for 20, 30?
That's so important. I mean, I'm always working on paintings. Even if I have my show already, I'll be starting new paintings because you never know. A gallery might say, "Hey, do you have something? We have a client here. They love your work," et cetera, et cetera. And if you have a couple paintings hanging around the studio, you might have another sale. But if you just finish a show and say, "Okay, I'm done with that. You got to paint every day." And I'm inspired every day. I don't sit there and wait for inspiration. I'm inspired every day. I'm excited to get in the studio every day. And I have ideas in my head that I want to.
It's a great feeling, isn't it?
Oh, sure it is.
To know that you still like what you're doing.
Oh, I love it. I can't imagine not just spending time not painting. Even when I'm teaching, I have to paint. I have to make excuses to do demos and stuff just to paint.
So our guest today is Bill Kalwick, Wade Kalwick Jr. on It's Art, Let's Talk About It, Houston painter. There's links at the bottom of the website if you're listening as you're playing along. And then, of course, we'll post some photographs and I'll call Claudia and we'll get some pictures to put up, some images to put up on the website that you approve of. and we'll make that happen. But what subject matters fascinates you now? I mean, I know you went through, and I keep bringing up the Guatemala because I love it so much. Our daughter was born in Guatemala. Jan and I adopted Emily, 30 years ago. And that's when I first, in fact, saw your works. And that's why it became a special place in my heart, was you were painting the people that we love. And so I've always been fascinated with it. And so that's been fun. But you don't do as much Guatemala work. And so,
No, I mean, like I said, indigenous cultures have always fascinated me. And as a young person, Native Americans fascinated me. And so I decided, you know what, I'm kind of done painting that. I enjoyed painting it. I saw the culture changing. I felt that I really caught the end of something. And I always, in my mind, imagine myself as Sorolla painting the different areas of Spain before it disappeared.
Russell painting the last of the
Right. And so I kind of fantasized that I was like that. I was young back then. But anyway, so Western art has always been a part of me. And so now I've been painting more Native Americans. That's probably, and some cowboy things, but Native Americans are really both of those subjects I really enjoy painting.
A particular tribe of Native Americans?
Right now, I've been concentrating more on the Sioux, but I'd like to do some work with the Comanches. Living in Texas and knowing the history of the Comanches, they're always a fascination. They've always been a fascination to me, but it's hard. Do you see that famous painting that Turpning did? And it's, man, what am I going to do? He's already done it. Them coming back from the raid with the top hat and umbrella, the parasols and everything.
Is that tough, finding these subjects?
You do a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And it creates images in your mind.
Okay.
And a lot of artists I know, that's how they come up with ideas for their paintings, is by reading historical accounts of things that happened early Texas history.
We got bells going off. That's you. No, don't worry about it. But so early accounts of Texas history, and you just come up with, the imagery.
Yeah, just basically different accounts of things that happened in the early West, early encounters with Native
Sounds like
Americans.
good advice to young students as well, to read a lot, get your imagery, get your thoughts from.
And I think that's a difficult thing, is finding your niche in the world of either Western art or realism. I know when I was young, I just loved paint. I just looked for an excuse to paint. Subject matter wasn't too important. I just wanted to paint. And meandering a little bit, and I liked Western art. And of course, I was studying with Lajos Markos, and that's what he did. He did a lot of Western art. And so that was kind of an influence and fascination for me. But what I tell students is find something that you're interested in, because you have to know your subject matter.
Right. How much of what you do is muscle memory? Do you think about how to draw a horse anymore?
The thing is, a lot is muscle memory, especially with mixing color, for example, just applying paint. You're concentrating. It gives you the opportunity to concentrate on other things.
I've watched you paint, and it doesn't even look like you're doing it consciously. You go to put some paint on a paintbrush and you just kind of do it, right? It's not.
I automatically adjust colors. If it's too warm, I cool it off
that's muscle memory.
Yeah, just grabbing it. And it's hard to teach that, try to show students how to adjust colors, because they get frustrated. And I never have to teach a student how to make mud, because that's what they come up with. But just trying to have a dominating color and working.
You paint with a full palette or 3-4 colors?
It's a more limited palette, but it's about 6 colors.
Yeah.
I have to count them. I don't even know how many there are.
It's just kind of, you throw them out there, and that's where you start and adjust accordingly.
I use the same palette for everything. I have colors that I might add from landscape painting. Sure. Up in Colorado, I might put on some Prussian blue or something, or some other colors that I may need. But basically, I have a palette that I use for portraits, and I use it for pretty much everything.
That muscle memory concept, though, it's 10,000 times, once said, of doing something.
Oh, I mean, when you've been painting for years.
When did you feel like you were getting good at this?
Oh, I don't know. I remember when I got a compliment from my teacher, Markos.
Yeah.
Because I studied with him for years before he ever said he gave me a compliment.
And it was a true compliment.
So I remember that compliment. And that was the one thing about him. He was Eastern European. They don't throw out compliments, and he did not compliment anybody. But it was going into a gallery with him. It was an interesting experience. He would rip paintings apart. He could draw and paint the horse from any angle out of his head. He just knew it so well.
And again, that's that muscle memory.
And so if someone didn't do it right, he would point it out. He knew the horse so well. Yeah, it was a while before he gave me a compliment, and finally gave me a compliment and shook my hand. So I figured, oh, wow.
Maybe I might get there.
Maybe I might get there.
Might get there. Yeah, I was in the studio the other day with Jason Skull, and somebody said, you don't use reference pictures of the horse that you're doing. And he said, if I can't sculpt this horse by muscle memory now in any angle, I mean, he just knows what the horse looks like. I mean, because that's what he does, right? I mean, and he was a young person who was asking that question. He said, you just need to do it. Do a lot of it. And you recommend painting with life. I mean,
that's what I always did. I always did plein air before plein air was a thing. As a young person, I used to paint in plein air. And of course, it got popular, I guess, in the 90s or whatever. But that was always a thing for me. And studying with Lajos Markos, we always had live models. We had figure models, portrait models, painting, drawing with charcoal.
And you still do that today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And once a week, I go paint with a live model. And if I need to hire a model, that's separate. But at least once a week, I have a model that I paint from.
Wow. That's fascinating. The concept of teaching young people. I mean, did you ever think about being a teacher?
No, never thought really.
This was always what you were going to do.
Yeah, that wasn't one of my goals. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
I guess when I started to get known in Houston for my portraits, people would say, why don't you teach a class? And then before you know it, there would be groups of artists that would say, hey, why don't you take a group to San Miguel and paint for a week? And so I said, that sounds fun. So I would every summer in July take groups to San Miguel to paint for a week or two, or we'd go somewhere else. Went to China for a month to paint. We'd just go to different places every year. And so that's kind of fun and enjoyable. You meet a lot of people and they end up buying your artwork. So it was a way to meet clients.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put your dad in this category. I'm gonna put Lajos in this category, but artists who've inspired you. In addition to them, who do you look to? Sorolla, you mentioned Sorolla.
Yeah, I mean, Sorolla always, they were, like I said, Frank Tenney Johnson, he was like one of my early influences in art and Western art, and of course a lot of CA artists. But yeah, Joaquin Sorolla and Sargent and Zorn and all of those. When I was at the Art Students League, I used to go up to the Hispanic Museum and see the collection of Sorollas that they had there. They have the huge paintings of Joaquin Sorolla. And back then, I'd be the only one in the museum. Nobody was talking about Sorolla back then.
Yeah.
But a lot of contemporary artists I like. I'm looking forward to see Kwang Ho's paintings. He's always been one of my favorite painters. And just a lot of the Grant Redden, one of my favorite painters.
Right.
So
They're both great guys.
Yeah, I know them and I admire their artwork. And so there's a lot of really good painters that I admire.
What's next for Bill Kalwick?
To get back to studio and paint, I have some deadlines coming up.
I mean, you've been painting every day, but you've not been painting like you like to paint.
No, I've been basically doing demos for the students
This
to show them how to. They would run into a problem. How do I paint this backlit portrait, for example? And so I do a demo and show them how to do it. They had no idea. They have a photograph and it's not a very good photograph. They don't know how to handle it. The camera can't pick it up like the eye can. Right. I did things like that. So I did, I don't know, a dozen demos of different things over the last 4 weeks. So
it's a great program, though. And I hope the Houston Livestock Rodeo Show people continue it, the Western Art Academy, because I think it makes an impact in the lives of
it's incredible.
Half a dozen students every year, at least.
Oh, it's incredible to see the progress. And it makes us real happy as instructors to see these kids go on to win grand champion. And almost seems like every year, it's someone who we know that came through the program.
Who came through the WAA.
And who came through the WAA. And so I guess when I talked to the graduation, I said, Western Art Academy makes winners. And I think we do a good job of teaching these young people. They're very eager to learn.
What's the future of the Western art world?
I don't know. I don't know. It just kind of evolved, like we talked earlier, from, I don't know. I don't know what the future is. I just kind of do my thing. Styles and come and go.
Right.
And so I don't know. I just do what I love to do and hopefully find a buyer.
Yeah. And we talked about the other day, one of the things that it's not what we do for a living, it's who we are. We're absorbed into this art world. So you're going to continue to hopefully participate in the life of the Museum of Western Art, our 42nd annual roundup coming up in April of next year. You have a standing invitation to be
That's always a lot of fun.
To be a part of that.
I'll enjoy being
Today is the last day. By the time people hear this show, will have come down, but today's the last day of the month long. 4 teachers we've done. That's the 4 instructors that are always a part of the Western Art Academy. So that's fun because I think a lot of students who come through, they've seen, and we do it early on. We do it when you guys get here, and we make sure they see you guys in them hanging at the museum. And I think that's important that they know that we value your work enough to hang it in one of our galleries.
And many of them probably never been in a museum before.
And a lot of them have been in it now a lot, right? And we encourage them to be a part of that. But so I'm kind of hopeful that the Western art world is going to find that next generation.
Let's hope so.
And move forward.
Oh, I think they will.
Last chance. How do people get a hold of Bill Kalwick? I mean, it's Facebook, Instagram. What's your addresses out there?
Yeah, Instagram. Find me on Instagram. And I'm pretty easy to find. There's not many people with the last name Kalwick, so I'm kind of easy to find. But I try to, post often as I can, show you what I'm doing and what I've been up to.
We got 100,000 followers, 200,000.
No, not quite.
Not quite. But
I'm kind of new to technology. My son set it up for me. I did. They're like, Dad, you got to be on that. Everyone's on that. And I'm like, okay.
But they can find you on Instagram.
On Instagram.
Facebook page.
Page. And
is there a website?
And of course I have a website, just my last name.com, Kalwick.
That's it?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Because
that's fun, right? That you have just your last name.
Just my last name.com.
Really? Kalwick.com?
Yeah.
I thought maybe at least it'd be Kalwick Studios or something, but it's just Kalwick.com.
Yep.
Of course, we'll post those links down there on that, and anybody that's listening, certainly welcome to reach out to the Museum of Western Art. We know how to find Bill Kalwick.
Yeah, I guess I better update my website.
I need to get you people are going out there and start looking, but it's been art. Let's talk about it. And see, we sit down, and 45 minutes later, we're still talking about art.
Oh, yeah.
There's not one single piece of paper involved to give us talking points. But Bill, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
It's our Let's Talk About. I love saying this, an award-winning podcast produced by the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network.
Exciting.
So thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you.
See you soon in the museum world.
All right, great. Thank you.
Guys.